Hey guys, man, I hope you're having an awesome week. I love these weekly teaching videos, and this week I have my little Thai man. Yeah, so grab your cup of coffee and man, just open your heart up before the Lord. No matter where you're watching this, no matter what time, I believe God has something for all of us that will challenge us. And today, Thai, something we use in the military is Semper Gumby. And Semper Fi means always faithful, and Semper Gumby is always flexible. So with Ty, 2 weeks ago I couldn't make a video because I had pink eye. Well, that pink eye went into every eyeball in the Bobe family. So now it is almost through, and it's in Ty's. So my schedule today includes
that
him.
Pink eye 2 times.
Yeah, so he's at it in both eyes. So I'm so grateful for that because I don't want to spend any part of my life asking God why. I just want to trust Him and to focus on what. And because if I focus on why, sometimes I'll get over-analysis, paralysis by over-analysis. But if I focus on what, like, God, okay, this is how today looks for me. What would you like me to do with it, sir? And bringing that to God helps a ton. So today, having Ty with me, it's really cool. We get to talk through this because the title for this talk is Shared Suffering. And this is really the heart of Soulcon. And this is something that we teach in our house. And I want to talk through with you guys today because when we're disciples, we will share in suffering with other people. Whether that's, man, I just got off the phone with a dear friend of mine in ministry. And his family lost a loved one to cancer. And walking through that with somebody is difficult. But as disciples, we need to know whether it's a great experience or a bad experience that we have guys there with us because we need people that will share in suffering. Now, suffering for godliness and suffering with what happens in this world. I like to share in suffering with Ty when we're doing push-ups together because they're hard, but we can have fun in that process. I like to share in suffering with him when I get to disciple him and teach him. Like last night, we had a hard talk. Didn't we have a hard talk last night? Mm-hmm. And Ty got in trouble, and in our family, we discipline towards your God-given identity. And I taught him about sin last night. He sinned. And James 4:17 is what teaches us sin. It's when we know the good that we're supposed to do and we don't do it. And tell us what sin is, Ty. Can you tell us what sin is?
Sin is something that you're not supposed to do and you do it anyway, and it's lying in sin. And sin destroys the rest of your life, and my daddy sins a lot.
Yeah, and you know what I told Ty and what he said at the last part is really crucial because he got in trouble and I was able to disciple him in that moment of godly discipline in his life. And I also communicated to him that Daddy deals with sin all the time, but I can't let sin overcome me. And just because it feels right in the moment doesn't mean it's good for my mission that God has given me. So there's times when I know that I shouldn't do something and I do it anyway, and that's sin. And sin is not a list of items like the law in the Old Testament, but sin is something in our heart. And it's when we know personally in our heart, and that's walking with the Lord. And this is why it's so important to have people walking through life with you in your life, because what's sin for you might not be sin for somebody else, but you need people that know what your sins are. For me, I don't drink alcohol because that would be a sin for me. Now, I don't know what your theology is, but I don't think at all it's a sin to have alcohol. But if you are controlled by it, it is unbelievably a deadly thing. Just like I don't think it's a sin to have a Krispy Kreme donut. But if Krispy Kreme donuts are destroying your life because you don't have control over them, then it's destructive for your life. So that's the substance model that we walk in, but I need people that know me, that understand. Some guys I talk to, man, they haven't dealt with addictions, with like porn addictions like I've walked through, and they don't have to have such consistent accountability in their life like I do. So I need people that know that. Like, I need people to walk through and be disciples with me, and I need to be discipled. I need to be discipling. So in our own home, we look at this and we need shared suffering together. Ty needs to know when he's in trouble that he's not suffering alone. Cheers. Gentle. Boo! Cheers. Oh. He needs to know that he's not suffering alone. He needs to know that Daddy has suffered and does suffer with the struggle with sin too, but that Daddy doesn't get overcome by it. So in your life, this is what I would encourage today as you think about the shared suffering approach to discipleship, because let me tell you, you need it, I need it, Ty needs it. Jesus teaches in Mark 16, verse 15, and Jesus said to them, through the Great Commission, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He who believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will follow those who believe. In my name they will cast out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will take up serpents. And if they drink anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick and they will recover. And let me tell you, this Great Commission, remember, we're talking as big boys. This Great Commission is one that gets you uncomfortable, that gets you into, not just because there are, in the other books it says go out into all the world and make disciples. Go make disciples. This is go into all the world and preach the gospel, which the gospel, if we're preaching the gospel correctly, we are making disciples to every creature. So we want to not just tell them of the good news, we want to disciple them in the good news. But here's the deal. Cast out demons. Uncomfortable. Shared suffering. I've never done that myself. I can't wait to do it. But I've heard, and I've been on a mission trip where a pastor told me about how unbelievably uncomfortable that was when he did that. They will speak in new tongues. This is an interesting one, and this is one I would love to talk on more. Now, we have some great differing theologies on praying in tongues, but that's a great conversation to have in the context of a disciple relationship. And I think every believer should have those conversations. Whether you believe, you don't believe, whether you pray in tongues, you don't pray in tongues, now, whether you think that is praying in a different language so other people can interpret it, you need to talk through these with other people and get uncomfortable in your relationship with God, because I believe, and Soulcon teaches, that when we get uncomfortable, we see the kingdom come. But the kingdom is not a comfortable place to live for these physical bodies, because it's a supernatural place to live. It's 180 degrees different than our fleshly view of this life. So we got to get uncomfortable. They will take up serpents. Here's the deal. Ty, do you like picking up snakes? I do not like picking up snakes. Just throw it. I would not do it. Yeah, so that's uncomfortable. If you drink anything deadly, drinking something deadly, that is uncomfortable. That is shared suffering. And he says, by no means it will hurt them. They will lay their hands on the sick and they will recover. We need shared suffering inside of the body of Christ. You need to have the guts to pray for somebody, to lay your hands on them and pray for them if they're sick. And you need to get over all of your excuses, and me too, and Ty too, of what if God doesn't show up. That is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to obey our commander-in-chief and leave the results to him. And that's where we have to get to this really magnificent part of living, to where we're operating in obedience and we're seeing the majestic happen in our lives. Man, this last week I was in Enid, Oklahoma with Abraham Wright, and I was speaking. We were all there. Ty was there with us. Our family went up, and we had a shared experience. Yeah, there was bunk beds, and man, just the thing for us as dads, if you're a dad, our kids need shared experience and shared suffering with us, big time. They need to see that we're living this. They need to get on their knees and pray with us. They need to see us doing these things, and so we need that. So we were in Enid, and we went into a high school because I was speaking to Abraham's youth group that night. And I was speaking a message. Every message I speak, I want as many people to listen to as possible, because I'm so excited for what I have to say, because I believe the gospel, if people hear it and listen with all of their mind and all their heart, it will completely transform them in that moment. So we go into a 6A high school and we're inviting kids, which let me tell you, if you want to get uncomfortable, do that. Walk in with a youth pastor in your area and go with them and just invite people to church for the youth group that night. You're going to get some of the most interesting answers that you've ever been given. I would say 50 or more people I talked to and invited them to church. They've never been to church. And I'd say about 50 didn't know who Jesus was in Enid, Oklahoma. And I got to tell so many people about Jesus right there in the lunchroom. Well, shared suffering happened. This was an interesting experience for me. Abraham Wright was talking to me. He was dealing with a little bit of spiritual warfare with going into this high school. The spiritual warfare of fatigue, discouragement, man. And he was telling me, I feel like an outcast. I feel like these kids don't like me. I feel like I'm being annoying. I feel like, man, should we bring candy in? All these things. And we see God's hand on him the most supernatural way we've seen it in this high school. He's seen it. I've been with him 3 times in this high school. And we're in the first lunch, and it was just really kind of deflating. Not a lot of engagement, but a lot of people, a lot of kids, high school kids. And in the second lunch, Abraham and I are sitting in the middle of the cafeteria, which we haven't done. We're sitting in the middle, and all of a sudden a fight breaks out. A fight breaks out, and a fight breaks out, and it's right next to Abraham. And by the time a high school fight breaks out, which I fought in high school, I don't think I ever fought in the lunchroom, which unbelievably repentant for, and I don't think that is, I teach Thai, I don't think that is healthy at all. But Abraham was positioned strategically right there. So as soon as a fight breaks out in high school, there's kids videoing it, and there are groups in a circle around them. If we weren't exactly at that point, Abraham couldn't do what he did. So Abraham Wright, the defensive end from the NFL mentality, comes over. He stands up and acts. And I mean, these kids are just wailing on each other's face. I mean, these are guys my size, big high school kids, just knocking each other in the face. Abraham instinctually stands up, and he grabs one of the kids and falls to the ground with him, breaks the fight up. The principal comes over, the teachers come over, give Abraham a high five, and he just went from feeling like the annoying youth pastor to, man, thank you. Teachers are thanking him. The principal's thanking him, and he's starting to feel this. And no kidding, guys, it was so cool.
Oh, I could do that.
Yeah, all of the high school kids, there's about 600 kids in the room, high school students, they give Abraham a standing ovation. And they clap for him. He broke up this fight. They clap for him. And he went from the side of the spiritual warfare that I'm so discouraged, I don't think these kids like me, to a standing ovation. And what was the gap there? The gap was obedience to go. And he had the obedience to go. He saw God position him to get favor with the principal, the teachers of that school, the police officers that were there. And all of those students saw it, and all talked about it. And Abraham saw God show up on a supernatural way by allowing him to break up a fight, to then get a standing ovation from about 600 students. And we left and just rejoiced in God's hand being in that situation, because now he does ministry in that town. Now he has almost like a pass to go in whenever he wants as the youth pastor. Now he's not just a youth pastor coming in and tell people about church. He's the youth pastor that saved the day and got a standing ovation. And guys, we need this as brothers. We need to get uncomfortable, and we need to have shared experiences together for the gospel. And if you haven't done this recently, if you haven't grabbed one of your guy friends and said, you know what, let's get 50 gospel tracts and let's go into a neighborhood, knock on doors, and tell people about Jesus. That's the most practical way. Let me tell you, that is one of my favorite ways. If you're at that point and you want to do that, go back. We have a weekly teaching video with Mike Napier was my guest. Probably like weekly teaching 1 through 10, right in there with Mike Napier. It's an amazing teaching on that evangelism. But no matter what, we need that shared experience to say, let's go and let's get uncomfortable for the gospel, and let's see God show up, because sometimes he does in a miraculous way, and guys, sometimes he doesn't. But we are supposed to be obedient. So I want to leave that with you guys, that verse. We need shared suffering together. So thanks for sharing us that. But that's King David, as well as before he was king, as David taking on Goliath. But we need that as warriors. We need to know that we're not alone. He found that because of the fight at the school. Abraham was like David with Goliath. That's funny. But we need that together, guys. Please hear my heart. You need other guys with you, and you need guys suffering alongside of you. Whether that's with push-ups, fasting, Hell Week, whatever that looks like for you, going through the Soulcon challenges, whatever that is, you need guys suffering with you, because if they're suffering with you, they can relate to you. And if they can relate to you, they're going to be there in those dark times in your soul when they know how to reach in and grab you and pull you back out into the battlefield when your soul wants to run away and hide. So guys, know that I love you. Continue to be disciples and be discipled. Be a disciple and continue discipling other people, and go out into all the world and preach the gospel. Make disciples. Get uncomfortable for Jesus and watch God show up, because he is faithful. We just need to be obedient. Guys, I love you. Ty, can you say bye?
Bye.
Bye.
I love you guys. Mwah.
Hey, see you guys. We'll talk to you next week.